Hi, I'm Gavin, and welcome back to the S.O.U.N.D Project. So today we are on location with Melissa Destree from Destree Architects, and we are actually here at University of Wisconsin-Green Bay, which is a project that we've worked on, and first project that we've worked on actually, which is, I keep telling people all the time that if you could be the architect on all of our projects, that'd be amazing.
That'd be wonderful. Yeah. No, you guys were great working with. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. So let's start off a little bit by just telling the audience a little bit about your background.
Yeah, I am an architect and a registered interior designer. We have our own firm. There's 9 of us, and we've been around now. We're going to be celebrating 25 years, and we actually specialize on interior build-outs and renovations. And over the years, we have done quite a few sound studios, video studios, a city channel for the city of Madison in Wisconsin, as well as some spaces for the University of Wisconsin system, which is what brought us here to UW Green Bay. So.
Gotcha. And so, yeah, you've done studios before.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
as far as doing a studio, how does that differ compared to some of the other projects you're working on?
Well, I will start that this one was wonderful, actually, having an acoustical designer. Because a lot of our projects that we'll work with, we work with the engineers on staff. They have very specific ideas and goals, and we work specifically with them on the design of the space and then support them as the architects. So it was actually kind of fun having a more collaborative process here on this project.
Yeah, and that went really well on this one. It's, I always like to learn from people who know a lot more than we do on certain topics, and that's for sure the case here. But just the back and forth with, it was mostly yourself and Richard and also Tracy and Oscar on my staff and myself. And it was just a fun project. So there's also a little bit about your background. Well, let's first talk about what led you to architecture.
Well, it is a very dramatic story of me being a 6-year-old with a Lillian Vernon drafting kit.
Oh, wow.
And I think I was in Indianapolis staying at some high-rise, and I went home and I'm like, I'm going to draw the floor plans of that. And I had the common sense of stacking my plumbing.
Oh, wow.
And my parents were like, okay, there must be something here. So I always knew. In high school, I took 4 years of mechanical drafting and designed my vice principal's house he built in Arkansas.
Wow.
And went to University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee for my bachelor's and my master's degree. And then we do higher end residential, but we also do food and beverage and interior spaces. Like, I love the level of detail of interior architecture. And that's one of the things that's gravitated to a project like this in doing a sound studio. So,
one of the things that I think it was one of the first conversations we ever had was you were telling me that you used to run a music store.
Yes, for 3 years, focusing on vacuum tube amplification. We were a Gretsch dealer and Dr. Z amps. And it was great. Enjoyed it for 3 years, and then it was bought out by another local owner. And so I had enough information to be a little dangerous. And that's one of the reasons we started doing the city of Madison, because I just knew some engineers around town and things like that. So got my foot in the door.
Gotcha. So, and had you always been passionate about that type of thing, like amps and?
Yes. And just a huge fan of music. I was going to say, I was reminiscing this weekend because now I have nephews and stuff who all want vintage music t-shirts. And I'm like, well, Mudhoney, Fugazi, or Husker Du, what should I get them? So that was like, that was my scene. So it was fun.
That is awesome. And now are you a musician yourself?
No. I play French horn. I play piano, but no, I don't perform.
Then you're a musician.
Yes, 12 years of it. Thinking of actually buying myself a new French horn.
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah. I play in a band, and we have a French horn in our band. Like, it's a rock band, and then there's a French horn player.
Cool.
Yeah. It's super fun. So when it comes to architecture, and you started your firm like almost 25 years ago, you said? Yeah. Did you work anywhere else before then, or it was?
Yes, 2 very well-known architecture firms, Flad and Kaler Slater, and they both do quite a bit of international work as well, and they're all out of Wisconsin.
Okay. And you're based out of now? In
Madison, Wisconsin.
Madison still, okay. And are your projects mostly within the state, or how far?
Well, we've done work on 5 continents.
Nice.
One company in Wisconsin is called Alliance Laundry, and they own Speed Queen, the laundromat company.
Yeah.
So we designed their new brand format, and we helped them with 17 of them.
Okay.
New Zealand, China, Florence, Italy,
Wow, that's
Colombia. Cool. So we were able to do quite a few projects with them.
Awesome. How much travel do you have to do with your projects? How often are you like on site?
Probably 1 or 2 days a week.
Okay.
Generally speaking, we work in Illinois, Wisconsin, and Minnesota.
Okay. Okay, so mostly drivable.
Mostly driving
things.
now.
That's nice. Yeah, like a lot of our projects is 90% out of state or overseas, so it's like a lot of travel. But it's also fun to do that too and see a little bit different part of the country. So, so with this project in particular, I know it was a little different with having us involved. But what were some of the biggest challenges that you had with this one?
Well, to tell people a little bit about this project, it's 4 control rooms and live rooms in 2 separate buildings at the university. And the building we're in right now is from the 1960s. So we had lower ceiling heights, we had HVAC distribution concerns in regards to dampening sound. And then the other building was a beautiful auditorium building built in the 1990s. But the whole structural element kind of moves. It was kind of designed that way, acoustically for their auditorium.
Sure.
So we were turning office space into control rooms. So 2 very different approaches. So it was almost doing 2 projects at once.
Yeah.
So I think the biggest challenge was the 1960s building.
Yeah.
And kind of utilizing what we could from the limited canvas we were given.
Yeah.
So.
I remember we had multiple meetings on just the low ceiling height and how to optimize it, because in our studios we want them to have tall ceiling heights wherever possible, and
we're excited about 710.
Yeah, right. But yeah, it turned out beautiful. I mean, and again, it's a collaborative effort. You know, it's like it's one of those things where I love when there's an accomplished architect on our projects, because while Tracy has her master's in architecture and she's great, and we have drafters and acoustical consultants on staff. We're not licensed architects, and so it's always helpful to have someone helping us on that front. So, so with this space here, is it something where do you anticipate wanting to do more of these studio projects?
Oh yes, so it's like doing Sudoku. I enjoy putting a lot of things in a very tight box. And a lot of firms aren't kind of in that mindset to do that.
Sure.
So, and again, we'll tend to do this even on like a restaurant project where you try and fit a kitchen in like the smallest spots.
Yeah.
It's very, very detail oriented, and we enjoy working with detail.
Yeah.
So.
That's one of our, I think one of my favorite parts of the process is just doing the initial layout. And it's like seeing how all the rooms interconnect, and then how the room dimensions play with each other, and sight lines into other rooms, and all of that is like kind of fitting all the puzzle pieces where they need to go. Yeah. So with it comes to your company, with your staff, like how many architects do you have on staff versus administrative?
Yeah, there's 2 architects on staff, and there are 9 of us, and we have a lead designer. He trained up in Minneapolis originally, and then Richard, who worked on this project, has been with me for 13 years.
Awesome.
And an interior designer, and then interns, and so there's 9 of us, and it's a really nice mix. We actually have no administrative staff.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Okay. That's
we all bite off a little bit of it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. How many projects at once do you guys typically tackle?
So because we do a lot of small interior build-outs, at any one time there's about 60 projects that are live.
Okay.
We are actively working on maybe 12 projects.
Sure.
And 1/3 of those are actively working on. So between design, bidding out, funding, construction, at any one time we're working on about 60 projects, but only actively about a dozen.
Yeah. How often in those other projects does acoustics come up as a concern?
It's becoming, which I love, a bigger and bigger issue.
Yeah.
We're finding in office environments, this is something I'm quite passionate about in our office environments. We just put in felted walls in our entire office.
Yeah.
And PET systems in the ceiling and decorative elements down corridors made out of PET.
Yeah.
And we did not analyze it. We did it like aesthetically as well as knowing we're going to be handling the reverb and, kind of like the thumbnail kind of design stuff. And people walk through the space, they're like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
And people are starting to understand that if they invest in systems, it is much less stressful for their employees, and it's just a more warm working environment. So it is getting more and more, and I'm finding clients want to hire acoustical analysis to be done even on work environments, like office and business spaces. So
yeah, we do quite a bit of work in those type of projects. I mean, we do a ton of studios, but we get called a lot where there's office spaces that just it's not conducive to working.
Well, and when we do food and beverage, we are always promoting putting acoustical treatments in the ceilings.
Yeah.
Even applied like K13 kind of products that. Again, people are like, oh, well, that costs a lot of money. And I find it so wonderful when I can take a client to a restaurant and we can have a conversation.
Yes. Yeah.
And they will say, wow, you can actually have a conversation in this space. And you go, look up. And they're like, oh, it's popcorn ceiling. And I'm like, it is.
That's it.
That's why it looks great. Now there's more to it than it's popcorn ceiling, but that type of thing. So we enjoy actually integrating those things into our projects if the client can afford them.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, every space has some acoustical need, and not all clients want to invest in that, but if they do, that can just make a world of difference. Like, and especially on those workspaces. Like we have a podcast actually that's all about like office acoustics, and it's an important thing because it helps productivity. It helps from people not being distracted, and privacy as well, like so that people's conversations aren't heard throughout the office. And speaking of that, like how often on your projects are you dealing with like sound isolation issues, like where you're worried about disturbing other people?
That is very challenging because when you talk about like business environments, you do a really nice sound isolation detail and then it's hitting an aluminum mullion.
Yes. Or
the client's like, no, that radiator can't come out and be replaced. And you're like, it will not be sound isolated then because there's a radiator going through it. It is one, you have to educate the client and do the best you can with their budget, but it's always a terrible challenge. The aluminum mullion is like my nemesis at this point.
It is.
So,
it's always that weak point and flanking path for the sound to get around.
So.
So do you have any types of projects that you haven't worked on before that's kind of like I'd love to do this someday?
Oh my goodness. No, you've just stumped me.
Well, that's probably good, guys. That means you're working on all the things that you probably want to.
Strangely enough, we're getting to do some designs that are more environmental theme systems right now that has been really fun. And we had never done that before. And we're really kind of enjoying kind of taking on this. We're doing a tunnel design that's a theming similar to Dungeons and Dragons. I'll say that for trademarking purposes.
Sure. It's not exactly.
It's not exactly that, but and it's been like very masterful and mystical and everything. We've really kind of enjoyed that.
That is fun. Yeah. That's one thing that we love about our projects is every one of them is different, and that keeps you from getting burned out from doing the same thing over and over again.
I always kind of look at benchmarking on projects when we start researching. It's like, because we did, when we were doing this project, we were looking at some of your projects and doing all kinds of research on different studios and the looks and the lighting and everything. And I love doing that. And you can see sometimes when people have kind of lost the flair.
Yes, unfortunately.
They're not living the passion. So I'm hoping to just keep doing that.
Yeah. That's great. Well, and I'm sure that's a huge passion for you with the interior design background as well, like to combine both of those. And how has that helped you in like being an architect and an interior designer all at once? Oh,
I really like the interior spaces to communicate with the exterior.
Yeah.
It's just seems like a natural. So that's a little bit of Frank Lloyd Wright kind of, coming around where it's like the inside outside are the same.
Yeah.
I'm a firm believer in that being ultra modern or a classic, design. And it's really nice when you're an architect and an interior designer, you can focus and practice that a little bit more.
Yeah, and that's something with all of our projects. Like in this one here, we did renderings and kind of. It's always helpful to see the client's eyes light up a little bit, like oh, it can be like that,
It's real.
Yeah. And get feedback from them and adjust. So well, that's great. Well, I really appreciate you like taking time to be on the podcast, and I appreciate even more you being a part of this project.
Because it was great working with you.
Thank you. And it's one of those things where I mean. All the meetings, like you run a good meeting, I'll tell you that much. And so, I just really appreciate everything that you did. And thanks again for being on the show.
Yeah, wonderful.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, it's been another episode of the S.O.U.N.D Project. Thanks for being a part of it. I'm curious if you have an architectural style that you gravitate towards. Please comment that below, and we'll see you next week.